She always came back from book club, giggling, and tipsy. One Tuesday, I followed her. What I found? No books. Just bodies. Every Tuesday for the past 6 months, she would disappear around 7 in the evening with her little canvas tote bag that supposedly held whatever novel they were discussing that week. The routine was always the same. She'd kiss me goodbye, promise to be home by 11, and drive off in her silver Honda with this excited energy that made my stomach twist in ways I couldn't explain at the time. When she came back, she was always different. Her hair would be slightly messed up despite her attempts to smooth it down in the car mirror before coming inside. Her lipstick would be completely gone or smudged around the edges in a way that suggested more than just drinking wine and discussing character development. And God, the smell. She always reeked of whiskey, which was weird because she claimed they only drank white wine at book club to keep things classy. I started noticing other things too. The way she'd immediately head straight to the shower when she got home, claiming she felt sticky from the humidity even in the middle of winter. How she'd stuff her clothes directly into the hamper instead of leaving them on the chair like she usually did. The fact that she never, not once, mentioned a single book title or plot point from these supposed literary discussions. But what really got to me was how happy she seemed on Tuesday nights. Not just content or relaxed like you'd expect after hanging out with friends, but genuinely glowing. She'd practically bounce through the front door, humming under her breath, with this satisfied smile that made my chest tight with something I refused to name jealousy. I tried asking casual questions. What book are you reading this week? Who else is in the group? Where do you meet? Her answers were always vague and rushed. Some romance novel she couldn't remember the title of. Just a few women from work. Different people's houses each week. When I suggested maybe joining a book club myself, she got weird and defensive, insisting that this group was very exclusive and they weren't accepting new members. 3 weeks ago, something inside me finally snapped. She was getting ready for another Tuesday night meetup, standing in front of our bedroom mirror applying this dark red lipstick she only wore for special occasions. I watched her from the doorway as she adjusted her push-up bra and smoothed down a dress I'd never seen before, black, clingy, way too fancy for sitting around someone's living room talking about books. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. The following Tuesday, I told her I had to work late. She bought it without question, probably relieved she wouldn't have to deal with my increasingly suspicious questions. I watched from our living room window as she backed out of the driveway, then I grabbed my keys and followed her. My hands were shaking as I trailed her silver Honda through downtown traffic, staying far enough back that she wouldn't notice but close enough that I wouldn't lose her. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that she really was just going to discuss literature with a group of wine moms. But the bigger part of me, the part that had been growing stronger with each suspicious Tuesday night, knew I was about to discover something that would blow up my entire world. She drove for about 20 minutes before pulling into the parking lot of an upscale condo complex on the north side of town. Not exactly the suburban neighborhood I'd pictured for a book club meeting. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place where young professionals with too much money lived. She parked near the entrance, checked her appearance in the rearview mirror one more time, and walked inside like she belonged there. I sat in my car for exactly 10 minutes, watching the building and trying to convince myself to just drive home and pretend this never happened. But I couldn't. I needed to know. The lobby was all marble floors and modern furniture that probably cost more than my car. There was a doorman behind a sleek desk who looked up when I walked in with a polite but questioning expression. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it, but somehow I managed to keep my voice steady when I told him I was delivering food to apartment 12B. He barely looked up from his computer screen as he buzzed me through to the elevators. I guess food delivery guys were common enough in a building like this that I didn't raise any red flags. As the elevator climbed to the 12th floor, I had about 30 seconds to figure out what the hell I was going to do when those doors opened. The hallway was carpeted in thick beige pile that muffled my footsteps as I made my way toward apartment B. I could hear music coming from behind the door, not the kind of background jazz you'd expect at a book discussion, but something with a heavy bass line that seemed to pulse through the walls. There were voices too, lots of them, mixed with laughter that sounded nothing like the polite chuckles of a literary society. I stood outside that door for what felt like hours but was probably only a few seconds, my hand raised to knock, when I heard her laugh. Her specific, unmistakable laugh that I'd been hearing in our kitchen and our bedroom for the past 2 years. Except now it sounded different. Breathier. More intimate. The door wasn't completely closed. There was maybe an inch gap where it hadn't latched properly, and through that gap, I could see into the apartment. What I saw made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. Update 1. It wasn't a book club. It wasn't even close. The apartment was dimly lit with soft-colored lights that cast everything in shades of red and purple. There were people everywhere, but none of them were sitting around discussing plot themes or character motivations. They were draped over expensive furniture in various states of undress, drinks in hand, touching each other in ways that made it very clear this was not a literary gathering. And there, in the middle of it all, was my girlfriend. She was wearing lingerie. Not the comfortable cotton stuff she wore to bed with me, but something black and lacy and barely there that I'd never seen before. She was perched on some guy's lap on the leather couch, her head thrown back in laughter at something he'd whispered in her ear. His hand was resting on her thigh in a way that was definitely not appropriate for a book discussion. I felt like I was going to throw up, or punch through the wall, or both. But I couldn't move. I just stood there in that hallway, watching through that tiny gap as the woman I'd been planning to propose to next month flirted and giggled with a complete stranger like I didn't even exist. Like our 2 years together meant absolutely nothing. The guy she was sitting on was everything I wasn't. Older, probably mid-40s, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of expensive watch that costs more than most people make in a year. He was whispering something in her ear that made her giggle and squirm in his lap, and I watched his hand slide higher up her thigh as she leaned into him. Around them, other couples were engaged in various levels of intimacy. Some were just talking and drinking, but others were way past the conversation stage. I recognized the setup now. This was one of those private parties I'd heard about but never really believed existed. The kind where married couples and committed partners came to explore with other people, with rules and boundaries that apparently didn't include being honest with your actual boyfriend. I don't know how long I stood there watching my entire relationship crumble through a crack in a door. It could have been minutes or hours. Time seemed to stretch and warp as I processed what I was seeing. Every Tuesday for 6 months, she'd been coming here. Every Tuesday, she'd been lying to my face and then coming home to sleep in our bed like nothing had happened. The worst part wasn't even seeing her with someone else. The worst part was how happy she looked. Happier than she'd been with me in months. Maybe ever. I was about to turn around and leave. What else could I do? When something even more shocking happened. A woman across the room turned toward the door, and I found myself staring directly into the face of my ex-girlfriend from college. My ex. The one who'd cheated on me 3 years ago with my roommate. The one who'd made my life hell for months afterward, spreading rumors and trying to turn our mutual friends against me. The one I'd finally managed to forget about after meeting my current girlfriend. Well, apparently soon-to-be ex-girlfriend. She was holding a phone, and she was pointing it directly at the couch where my girlfriend was getting increasingly cozy with Mr. Salt and Pepper. She was filming everything. Our eyes met through that crack in the door, and I saw her smile. Not a friendly smile. Not a surprise to see you smile. A cold, calculated smile that made my stomach drop even further than it already had. She'd been recording my girlfriend's extracurricular activities, and now she knew that I knew. I backed away from the door so fast I almost tripped over my own feet. My mind was racing as I stumbled toward the elevator, trying to process this new level of complication. It was bad enough that my girlfriend had been cheating on me for months. But now my vengeful ex was somehow involved, documenting everything for reasons I couldn't even begin to guess. The elevator ride down felt like descending into hell. By the time I reached the parking garage, my phone was already buzzing with a text from an unknown number. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the screen to read it. It was a video file. No message, just the attachment. I knew I shouldn't watch it. I knew it would only make everything worse. But I couldn't help myself. I opened the file and watched a clear, high-definition recording of my girlfriend in that black lingerie, laughing and touching and being touched by a man who wasn't me. Another text came through from the same unknown number. Thought you should know what she does on Tuesday nights. Some things never change. She's just like me. That last line hit me like a physical blow. My ex wasn't just exposing my girlfriend's cheating. She was claiming they were the same kind of person. The kind who destroyed relationships without caring about the collateral damage. But why? Why was my ex even at this party? How had she ended up in the same social circle as my girlfriend? And more importantly, how long had she known what was going on? I sat in my car in that parking garage for over an hour, staring at my phone and trying to make sense of the situation. Every few minutes, another text would come through with a different angle or a closer shot of my girlfriend's Tuesday night activities. It was like my ex had been building a case against her, collecting evidence for this exact moment. By the time I finally drove home, I had 17 different video files and photos on my phone, each one more damning than the last. The timestamp on the earliest one was from 2 months ago, which meant my ex had been documenting this for weeks before finally deciding to let me in on the secret. I made it home before my girlfriend did, which gave me time to shower and pretend to be asleep when she came tiptoeing through the bedroom door at 11:15. She slipped into bed beside me, smelling like whiskey and someone else's cologne, and whispered that she loved me into the darkness. I lay there staring at the ceiling until sunrise, trying to figure out what to do next. Update 2. I didn't confront her right away. I know that probably sounds crazy, but I needed time to think. Plus, I was curious to see how far this would go now that my ex was involved. The next morning, my girlfriend acted completely normal. She made coffee, kissed me goodbye before work, asked if I wanted to grab dinner somewhere nice that weekend. Like she hadn't spent the previous evening in someone else's lap wearing lingerie I'd never seen before. I went through the motions of a regular day, but inside I was falling apart. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected another video from my ex. Instead, I got a single text around noon. We need to talk. Coffee at 3. I should have said no. I should have blocked the number and focused on dealing with my girlfriend's betrayal. But I was desperate for answers, and my ex was the only person who could give them to me. She looked exactly the same as she had in college, just more polished. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you can manipulate any situation to your advantage. She was already sitting at a corner table when I arrived, 2 cups of coffee waiting. I sat down across from her without saying hello. She smiled that same cold smile I'd seen through the apartment door. She told me she'd been attending these parties for about a year, ever since her divorce was finalized. Apparently, her ex-husband had been cheating on her for most of their marriage, and she'd decided to explore the lifestyle herself once she was free. She enjoyed the freedom, the lack of emotional attachment, the pure physical satisfaction without any of the messy relationship drama. 2 months ago, she'd been shocked to see my girlfriend walk into one of the parties. At first, she'd assumed I knew about it, that maybe we had some kind of arrangement. But after watching my girlfriend's behavior over several weeks, she realized this was definitely a secret. That's when she started recording everything. She claimed she was trying to protect me, that she knew what it felt like to be lied to and betrayed, and she didn't want me to waste any more time with someone who was deceiving me. But I could see the truth in her eyes. This wasn't about protecting me. This was about revenge. Not revenge against me. Revenge against my girlfriend, who represented everything my ex had lost when her own marriage fell apart. Here was this woman who seemed to have it all: a devoted boyfriend, a stable relationship, and the freedom to cheat without consequences. My ex couldn't stand it. She'd been waiting for the perfect moment to drop the bomb, and seeing me at the apartment building had been the opportunity she'd been looking for. But there was more. She told me my girlfriend wasn't just attending these parties, she was one of the organizers. She helped recruit new couples, planned the events, even had her own key to the apartment. This wasn't some casual experimentation. This was a whole secret life that had been going on right under my nose. The conversation lasted less than 30 minutes, but it changed everything. By the time I left that coffee shop, I had a complete picture of who my girlfriend really was, and it was nothing like the person I'd fallen in love with. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I went through her things. I found the lingerie hidden in the back of her closet, along with outfits I'd never seen her wear. I found a second phone in her jewelry box, a phone I didn't even know existed. When I managed to unlock it, I discovered months of text messages coordinating party schedules, discussing new members, making plans with specific people for specific activities. There were photos too. Photos of her with different men, in different apartments, doing things that made it clear these Tuesday night meetups were just the tip of the iceberg. I also found something else that made my blood run cold: messages between her and my ex. They'd been talking for weeks before my ex finally sent me those videos. Not friendly conversations, but tense exchanges where my ex was clearly threatening to expose everything unless my girlfriend ended things with me voluntarily. My girlfriend had refused, calling my ex jealous and pathetic, saying I would never believe her even if she did tell me the truth. That's when my ex had decided to show me herself. Reading those messages was like watching 2 people play chess with my life as the prize. My ex wanted to destroy my relationship, and my girlfriend wanted to keep living her double life without consequences. Neither of them seemed to care about what any of this was doing to me. But the biggest shock was still coming. As I scrolled through more of the messages on that hidden phone, I found a conversation from 3 months ago that made everything even worse. My girlfriend had been talking to someone about how to handle the fact that her boyfriend, me, was getting suspicious about her Tuesday night activities. The person she was talking to suggested she find a way to make me more secure in the relationship, maybe even proposed to me to throw me off the scent. They said men were less likely to question their partners when they felt like the relationship was moving forward. My girlfriend had loved the idea. She'd started dropping hints about engagement rings and our future together, not because she actually wanted to marry me, but because she thought it would make me less likely to discover her secret life. Every conversation we'd had about our future, every time she'd brought up wedding planning or talked about wanting to spend the rest of her life with me, it had all been manipulation. A calculated strategy to keep me distracted while she continued doing whatever she wanted with whoever she wanted. I put the phone back in her jewelry box and sat on our bed, staring at the wall and trying to process the fact that my entire relationship had been built on lies. Not just the Tuesday night parties, but everything. Every intimate moment, every future plan. Every time she told me she loved me, it had all been part of an elaborate deception designed to let her have her cake and eat it too. When she came home that night, I was waiting for her in the living room with printed copies of some of the text messages from her secret phone spread out on the coffee table. She tried to deny it at first, then got angry when that didn't work, accusing me of violating her privacy and going through her personal things. She said the parties were just harmless fun, that they didn't mean anything, that I was being possessive and controlling for being upset about it. But when I showed her the messages about using an engagement to manipulate me, something in her face changed. She realized I wasn't just upset about the cheating. I was devastated by the calculated nature of her deception. That's when she finally broke down and told me everything. How it had started as curiosity after a friend invited her to one party. How she'd gotten addicted to the excitement and freedom of it. How she convinced herself that what I didn't know couldn't hurt me, and that she could have both lives without anyone getting hurt. She begged me to forgive her, promised she would stop going to the parties, said she would delete the secret phone and never contact any of those people again. She cried and pleaded and swore that she loved me more than anything, that the parties were just physical and meaningless compared to what we had together. But I couldn't get past the manipulation. I could maybe have forgiven the cheating if she'd been honest about it, if she'd come to me and said she wanted to explore something different. But the lies, the calculated deception, the way she'd played with my emotions to cover her tracks, that felt unforgivable. I told her I needed time to think, and she moved in with a friend while I figured out what to do next. Final update. The next few weeks were the hardest of my adult life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything except replaying every moment of our relationship and wondering what had been real and what had been performance. My ex kept texting me, claiming she was worried about how I was handling everything and offering to meet up if I needed someone to talk to. I ignored every message. I knew she wasn't actually concerned about my well-being. She was just savoring her victory and hoping to twist the knife a little deeper. But something unexpected happened during those weeks of separation. Without my girlfriend's constant presence and emotional manipulation, I started to see our relationship more clearly. Not just the recent deception, but patterns that had been there from the beginning. How she'd always been secretive about her phone and computer. How she'd never wanted to merge our social circles or introduce me to her work friends. How she'd always insisted on maintaining separate bank accounts and never wanted to make any long-term commitments like signing a lease together or adopting a pet. I'd interpreted all of this as healthy independence, but now I realized it had been about maintaining the freedom to live a double life. I also started remembering conversations with friends and family who'd made offhand comments about feeling like they didn't really know her or how she seemed different when I wasn't around. Comments I dismissed at the time, but that now seemed like red flags I'd been too blind to see. 3 weeks after she moved out, my girlfriend showed up at my apartment with bags of takeout from my favorite restaurant and a speech about how she'd spent every day thinking about what she'd lost and how sorry she was for everything. She said she'd been attending some kind of support group for people with intimacy issues and that she finally understood why she'd sabotaged our relationship. She looked genuinely remorseful, and part of me wanted desperately to believe that she could change, that we could somehow rebuild what we did before I learned the truth. But as she talked about making amends and earning back my trust, all I could think about was that hidden phone and those calculated messages about manipulating me. How could I ever trust someone who was capable of that level of deception? How could I be in a relationship where I'd always be wondering what she was really doing when she wasn't with me? I realized that even if she was being completely honest now, even if she really had changed, I would never be able to fully believe her again. Every time she was late coming home, every time she was secretive about her phone, Every time she made plans that didn't include me, I would be suspicious. That's no way to live, and it's definitely no foundation for a marriage. So I told her I couldn't do it. Not because I didn't love her, but because I loved myself too much to spend the rest of my life waiting for the other shoe to drop. She took it better than I expected. Maybe she'd known deep down that what she'd done was unforgivable. Or maybe she was already making plans for her next relationship, her next opportunity to live multiple lives at once. The strangest part of this whole situation came a month later, when I got one final text from my ex. She told me she'd stopped attending the parties and was getting into therapy to work on her own issues with relationships and trust. She said watching how my girlfriend had treated me had forced her to confront how she'd treated people in her own life, and she didn't like what she saw. She apologized for using my pain as a weapon against my girlfriend, and for involving me in what was essentially a revenge plot between two people who'd hurt each other. She said she hoped I would find someone who deserved me, and that she was going to work on becoming someone who deserved genuine love herself. I don't know if I believe her, but it felt like some kind of closure to a chapter of my life that had been messier and more painful than I ever could have imagined. As for my girlfriend, I heard through mutual friends that she'd started dating someone new within 2 months of our breakup. I don't know if she told him about her Tuesday night activities, but I hope for his sake that she did. Everyone deserves to make informed decisions about their relationships. Looking back now, 6 months later, I'm actually grateful that my ex sent me those videos. Not because I enjoyed being humiliated or having my world turned upside down, but because I needed to know the truth. I was ready to propose to someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenient cover story for her real life. I've started dating again, slowly and carefully. I'm more cautious now about red flags and inconsistencies, but I'm also more confident about what I want and what I won't tolerate. I know what genuine love and respect look like, and I know what manipulation and deception feel like too. Sometimes I wonder if my girlfriend ever really loved me, or if I was just a useful prop in the life she wanted to present to the world. But I've stopped trying to figure that out, because ultimately it doesn't matter. What matters is that I got out before I wasted any more years on someone who didn't value what we had together. The Tuesday Night Book Club turned out to be the best thing that never happened to me. Because sometimes the biggest betrayals lead to the most important discoveries about yourself and what you really deserve from the people you choose to love.